categories of work, mobility, labor, and de-notified tribes. Along with these, he has also explored the concepts of caste, kinship, gender, and the state in his ethnographic research. His talk today is titled Invisibilizing the Invisibles, the Quest for Social Justice in India.
Thank you, Shambhavi. I'm quite a regular feature here. Before I begin, I would like to invite your attention to what I term as institutionalized defacement, institutionalized defecation. And this is, what you see here, this is institutionalized defecation. Okay, and defecation. What we defecate is not a very nice sight. And you might have noticed this. Before I should not really dwell on this because it's not a very nice word to use very often, but I would use a slightly different word to describe institutionalized, what we call invisibilization. I'm using this term to talk about the categories. There are certain categories in our society that remain until very recently invisible. And to a very large extent, these categories continue to remain invisible. This is going to be my topic. But before I begin, I would also invoke your indulgence to lodge your protest against the student, against the suspension of the students, which was very arbitrary, to say the least. Arbitrary is a very, it's an understatement. The manner in which this is again a kind of defacement. There is I would like to invoke another term, homogenization and defacement. Okay, defacement is a very harsh term. Okay, it also creates some kind of repugnance in you. But homogenization is politically, to a very large extent, is also accepted as a good thing. So, as part of this political culture that has, started taking roots with the coming of this government, is something which is it creates some kind of repugnance. Those who are sane-minded individuals would certainly find that it does create some kind of repugnance. A larger point that I would like to make is the, how text has been quite contradictory in nature. It creates lots of contradictions. Text in the sense that I would like to give a very concrete example. I would not really dwell on abstract terms. Yesterday, Wilson Bezwada spoke about Rohit Vemula and his mother. Now, we have certain social realities. Caste is one of them. After Rohit Vemula ended his life protesting against the kind of treatment that was meted out to them in Hyderabad University, in order to discredit his struggle, this government continued to question his caste identity. They even went on to formulating a committee headed by a retired judge who came out with this interesting revelation that Rohit Vemula was not a Dalit. Now this is a typical Brahminical understanding of Indian social reality, which is also very patriarchal in nature. Rohit Vemula's mother is Dalit. His father is not. His father comes from one of those, most backward castes. Now, by denying Rohit Vemula's social identity as a Dalit, this establishment, this government is also trying to deny his social identity, also trying to deny the role of his mother and the way she brought him up. So in that sense, the understanding of this, issue is very patriarchal. the understanding that is being put forth by this establishment. This is also, in a way, an attempt to invisibilize those who have become, by fighting various kind of political struggles, I'm talking about Dalits, and they have somehow visibilized them. Certainly, Indian constitutions have also had some provisions, and because of which they have been able to achieve certain, socio-economic and political mobility. But there are also a large number of Dalits who remain invisibilized. Those who have remained invisibilized come from, Sohail Hashmi Saab pointed out, Muslims and Christian Dalits. Now, interestingly, Article 15 of the Indian Constitution says that we should not really discriminate people on the basis of their religion. Now, we may say that Dalits among Muslims, Dalits among Christians, once they have embraced non-Indianized religion, they no longer remain Dalits. But that is not true. The social reality is very different. We are constitutionally, we are bureaucratic, we may deny them this identity, but the fact remains that their social identity, social discrimination remains. They continue to face discrimination of various kinds. So what is so sacrosanct about Hinduism that only those Dalits who were Hindus or were Hindus should be able to access reservation benefits? So the point that I'm trying to make is that certain kind of texts also play a very active role in invisibilizing those who have remained invisible. Now I repeat the point that there have been attempts on the part of those who have remained invisible to become visible. But attempts on the part of this establishment, if you see the number of students that have been suspended, come from marginalized sections, minorities, Dalits and OBCs. What happened in Hyderabad, everybody knows. So now the challenge is, those who have been able to become visible should now widen the scope of their struggle for those who continue to remain invisible. Another category that I would briefly like to invoke here, the category of denotified tribes. We don't really talk about these tribes, tribes that were categorized as criminal tribes by the British. And what has happened today, they continue to remain. The social discourse is such that when you talk about, about denotified tribes in our society, I had these experiences while I was carrying out my field work. Either they are considered to be, culture-based people. They continue to have criminal tendencies to commit crime. Now the problem with this social discourse is that the kind of constitutional provisions that have been made accessible to Dalits and Adivasis. A lot of these denotified tribe members, because have remained the purview of those provisions. Interestingly, they are not educated, they are not politically assertive, they are not politically mobilized. So mainstream political parties do not really look at these people as as a community or category that can face votes. So because of this invisible nature that these communities have, there is another danger that that I, during my fieldwork, noticed. Now, since these people became marginalized in many senses, in the sense of political, in the sense of in the realm of education, in the realm of economy, society. Now, the danger that I came across was this, that these communities are now heavily being politicized. They are not recognized until very recently as Hindus because they are nomadic tribes. They are criminal tribes. Okay. Now, what has happened? That the Hindu right has entered among these communities, creating a kind of assertion among them that they are Hindus. Now, why has this happened? One of the reasons I believe is that those who have become politically visibilized have really failed to address, have really failed to bring these people into the fold of their struggle. Now this becomes politically extremely volatile issue. Now how to deal with this? The danger is that the politicization or the assertion or the consciousness as Hindu is itself not a very dangerous thing. I am not questioning that they should not really assert themselves as Hindus. But the kind of Hinduization that is happening, the manner in which they are being pitted out against the minorities in this country is a very dangerous thing. That's the point that I would like to make. In 1984 anti-Sikh riots, the people who bore the brunt of violence by the majority in those Delhi slums were these denotified tribes, Sikhalgars, Banjaras, who had this nomadic existence. So, the problem is that unless and until those who have become visibilized do not fight for these invisible communities, be it Muslims, be it Dalit Christians, be it Dalit Muslims, be it denotified tribes, will continue to have extremely unstable polity in this country. That's the point that I would like to make. So therefore, I mean, the onus of the responsibility of bringing these people lies equally on those, not only those who are politically conscious like people like us, but also those who have become politically visibilized. I mean, politics of Dalits, politics of minorities should also very consciously try to bring these people into the mainstream if you really want to empower these communities that have remained invisible. So that is, with these words, I think I should stop here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pradeep. So Pradeep will take a couple of questions now. So I'd now like to invite our next speaker.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. You said that the suspension of students, the students who have been suspended, 11 of them, they come from a certain marginalized background. And I agree with that, but I would also like the student community here to look at those suspensions, not just in terms of an act against a certain community, coming from a certain socioeconomic position, but also a message coming from the right wing and our Sanghi VC that, you know, it's about depoliticizing the campus. That if you raise your voice and if we become conscious and raise questions, then this is what he's going to do to us. So it's also kind of symbolizing or kind of giving us a signal that beware, you know, be scared. Apni awaaz mat uthao. So it has a larger connotation of trying to depoliticize the campus and the student community in general by scaring them. So we also need to show the VC we are not scared. So I think that is also the light in which you can see those suspensions.
I would quickly like to respond to that. Well, it's not a response, but I think I wanted to speak on this issue, but I thought I should not. It is not only about scaring people off, but also sheltering certain tendencies, casteist and communal, in this administration. You are sending out a very strong message to, probably not only this larger JNU community, but outside, that those who vilify, who use derogatory language to describe Dalits and minorities, enjoy patronage of this administration. We have been fighting against these tendencies, but we have, and we have tried to seek explanation from the Vice Chancellor on this particular issue. But we have not been given appointments. We have not been heard properly. But the person who made these nasty remarks against the Muslims and Dalits in this university, our own colleagues, continues to be on various committees, continues to talk brazenly, on various platforms, continues to hold on to power. So it is not only about, there are various mechanisms to scare people off, but also, openly, brazenly overlooking discrimination. And this is an open act. Suspending students who stood for certain rights, who voice their concerns, because they want to come to this university and be educated. But if you're actively stopping them, now their language apparently of discrimination has softened because, the kind of uproar that the entire country saw with Rohit Vemula's going. Now they have it seems, adopted this new strategy of suspending students, depriving them of education, so that they would not be able to voice their concerns anymore. So they are using all kinds of tactics, but we would not let them succeed. We will keep fighting, because that's the only weapon that we have. We have reclaimed this place because we want to put things across. We want to probably, make our concerns reach by simply talking here, by simply raising our concerns, not by doing anything else. Okay? By talking to you guys, by having your, suggestions, outputs, we'll continue to fight this. Unless we feel that this place is, for all of us, and not for any one particular community. Thank you.